Hey, beautiful, please consider subscribing to our channel if you've been enjoying these stories. Your support helps a lot. Aid us in reaching our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
The first thing I heard was her voice, shrill and cracking through the morning air like a snapped branch. "Officer, arrest him right now. He stole community property." The words echoed across my backyard, carried on the breeze that rustled the palm fronds above. I stood by the patio sliding doors, watching two uniformed deputies step around my drained pool. Their boots clicked on the dry tile, scuffed by the pump I'd run all night. The sun glared off the pale blue basin, still wet in places where puddles hadn't evaporated, sending the sharp smell of chlorine residue into the already warm morning. Karen stood there in her pastel pink sports set, shaking with rage. Her mascara streaked under her sunglasses as she gestured at the empty pit. Her bracelets jingled with every furious flick of her wrist. The taller officer looked at her with polite confusion. "Ma'am, it's his pool. He drained his own pool." "No," she screeched, voice cracking into a squeal that made the officers wince. "This was for the HOA summer bash. He's vandalizing community resources. Arrest him." The deputy turned to me, raising an eyebrow. I folded my arms over my chest, heart still pounding with leftover adrenaline. 1,000 thoughts fought for space in my mind, but overriding all of them was a single memory. Just 2 weeks earlier, this woman had tried to take over my life with the casual entitlement of someone ordering a coffee with extra foam. It was a Monday morning like any other. I'd woken early, fed Max, my German Shepherd mix, and settled onto a deck chair by the pool with a steaming mug of black coffee. The dawn light slid across the water, making rippling shadows dance up the white stucco walls. The smell of cut grass drifted from 2 houses down, where old Mr. Callahan was already trimming his edges, humming Sinatra under his breath. I closed my eyes, listening to Max's soft snuffling as he explored the flower beds. It was peace. Silence interrupted only by birdsong and the faint mechanical whir of the pool filter. Until her. "Well, look at you. Sleeping in again?" Her voice sliced through the quiet. I opened my eyes to see her leaning on my fence, chin propped on perfectly manicured hands, nails painted a pearlescent lavender. Karen. Mid-50s, hair so chemically blonde it was almost white, pulled into a ponytail that gave her face an unnatural tightness. Her workout top clung to her surgically enhanced curves, and a diamond tennis bracelet glimmered against her fake tan. "Morning, Karen," I said cautiously. She never came by without reason. Max patted over, sniffing at her presence, tail stiff. Even he didn't trust her. She gave me a wide, Botox-frozen smile. "I have wonderful news. We've decided to host the HOA Summer Bash this year at your place." I blinked, the words not processing. She tilted her head like a crow eyeing a dead squirrel. "You decided?" I asked. "Yes, of course. My backyard is far too small for everyone, and yours is perfect. Look at that pool." She gestured grandly as if unveiling an art exhibit. "Olympic-sized compared to the rest of us." "It's 30 feet, I said flatly. "Well, it's big enough." She flicked a hand. The board voted. "So we'll need access next Saturday for setup. Catering, decorations, security, maybe a little live music." My chest tightened with disbelief. "Karen, I didn't agree to this." She blinked, smile fading into irritation. "Why wouldn't you agree? It's for the community. Everyone will be there. Don't be antisocial." "I just prefer my privacy," I said, keeping my tone polite despite the creeping anger in my veins. "And I don't want 200 people trampling my yard or using my bathrooms." She stared at me, her expression darkening like a cloud sliding over the sun. "Listen, neighbor boy," she said, her voice dropping into a dangerous sweetness. "This is important to us. You want to be a good neighbor, don't you?" I forced a calm exhale. "I'm sorry, Karen. The answer is no." She paused. For a second, something vicious flickered behind her eyes. Then she straightened up, adjusting her ponytail with jerky, irritated movements. "You'll regret this. The HOA has ways of dealing with stubborn little boys like you." She walked away without waiting for a response, her designer trainers squeaking on the concrete. Max growled low in his throat. I sat there for a long moment, coffee cooling rapidly in my mug, stomach churning. The sun rose higher, sending shifting diamonds across the water. I watched its surface ripple gently, feeling my peace unravel thread by thread. The rest of the week passed in a tense haze. I avoided her when I saw her briskly power-walking past my house, clutching her phone and glaring at my windows. But on Friday evening, everything detonated. I came home from work just as the sunset was throwing long gold stripes across the neighborhood. Max greeted me with excited yips, his claws clicking against the hardwood floor. I ruffled his ears, set down my briefcase and pulled out the day's mail bundle. Among the envelopes was the HOA newsletter. I flipped it open absently as I walked toward the kitchen. Halfway through the front page I stopped. My heart sank. There it was in bold teal lettering surrounded by cheerful confetti clip art. Community Summer Bash. Hosted generously by, my name. Join us for an unforgettable pool party, barbecue, games, and fun for the whole family. The paper crumpled in my fist. My ears roared with pulse blood as rage flared up my neck. Max whined, sensing the sudden shift in my mood. I read it again and again as if the words might rearrange themselves into sanity. They didn't. Neighbors began texting that night. Thanks for hosting, man. Need us to bring extra chairs? Can't wait, the kids are so excited. I didn't sleep. My mind spun all night, alternating between fury and disbelief. By sunrise, I was sitting on my patio again, staring at the shimmering blue pool that had become the center of my unwanted public humiliation. The surface rippled under the soft morning breeze, reflecting the pink and gold sky. Max lay by my feet, ears flicking at the sounds of early joggers on the street. I didn't know how, but I was certain of one thing. Karen wasn't going to get her party. Not here. Not in my home. Not after declaring war. As the sun rose higher, warming the tiles under my bare feet, I made myself a promise. I would find a way to stop her. And when I did, it wouldn't just end her party plans. It would end her reign. For the first time since moving here, I felt a grim smile spread across my face. Max nudged my leg, sensing my resolve. I reached down to scratch behind his ears, my gaze locked on the perfect blue water as a single word pulsed in my mind, steady and absolute. Enough. The next morning felt like stepping into someone else's life. I walked out to grab the newspaper and two strangers were standing on my front lawn, pointing at my backyard gate. One wore a shirt with a Party Rentals logo, the other scrolled on his phone, reading off notes. That'll be the entrance for catering deliveries, the first man said. He glanced up at me and smiled politely. You the homeowner? We'll need access to start tent setup tomorrow. I blinked at him, feeling my pulse hammering in my throat. What are you talking about? The HOA Summer Bash. He gestured at his phone. Karen said everything was arranged. You're hosting, right? I didn't answer. I just turned and walked back inside, shutting the door quietly behind me. Max whined softly, sensing my agitation. I knelt down and pressed my forehead against his, feeling his warm breath puff against my cheek. For a moment, I let my mind drift to simpler memories. Moving in here 3 years ago, unpacking boxes late into the night, eating cold pizza on the patio under the stars, Max curled up next to me. I'd worked hard for this place. Every tile, every blade of grass trimmed just the way I liked it. It was peace, my sanctuary after long hours managing IT operations in a suffocating corporate office. And now Karen had invaded it with the casual cruelty of someone flicking lint off their sleeve. By mid-morning, text messages were pouring in. Neighbors offering to bring drinks, yard games, folding chairs. Parents asking if they could drop their kids off early to swim before the crowds arrived. Each message felt like a fresh slap to the face. My polite refusal had been ignored entirely. In Karen's mind, my silence was consent. My autonomy was irrelevant. I knew what I had to do. That evening, I walked into the HOA meeting at the clubhouse. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow across the folding tables and stale donut boxes. The room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and floor polish. Karen stood at the front, clipboard in hand, radiating smug confidence as she addressed the room. Thank you all for coming. As you know, this year's Summer Bash will be held at my name's beautiful home and pool. It's so generous of him to share with the community. A smattering of applause broke out. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my expression calm as I stepped forward. I never agreed to host this party, I said clearly, projecting my voice to reach the back of the room. The chatter died instantly. Karen froze, then turned toward me with a tight smile. Oh, come now, she cooed, her voice dripping fake sweetness. Don't be modest. You told me you were happy to help. I shook my head. No. I told you I value my privacy. I said no. You ignored me. Her smile flickered, twitching at the corners. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Karen's eyes darted around, gauging the room before focusing on me with calculated cruelty. Let's be clear, dear. You're a homeowner in this association. We all contribute to the community. It's your turn. Or do we need to discuss your unapproved patio remodel from last year? The words landed like a punch to the ribs. My stomach twisted with nausea as a murmur rippled through the board members. I opened my mouth, but she cut me off sharply, voice snapping like a whip. Meeting adjourned, she declared, slapping her clipboard down. We'll see you Saturday. People began gathering their things, avoiding my eyes as they filed past. I stood there alone, feeling my face burn with humiliation. Karen swept past me, perfume choking the air between us. She leaned in close, her breath hot and sour with stale coffee. Try to interfere, and I'll fine you so hard you'll wish you'd never moved here, she whispered. Then she was gone, heels clicking down the hallway like gunshots. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily in the darkness. Rage coiled tight in my chest, burning a hole straight through my calm. Max lay beside me, his rhythmic breathing a small comfort in the suffocating gloom. Images flashed in my mind, unbidden. Strangers splashing in my pool, wet footprints smearing my tiles, children tracking mud through my living room to use my bathroom, Karen standing poolside in her sun hat, basking in praise for a party she never lifted a finger to host. Every cell in my body vibrated with fury. I felt stripped of dignity, as if I'd been publicly undressed and left shivering in the street. In the pale pre-dawn light, I stood barefoot by the sliding glass door, staring out at the dark silhouette of my pool. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the faint stars overhead. Max sat at my feet, ears perked, his gaze locked on me in silent solidarity. I thought about my options. Legal action would take weeks, possibly months. By the time I won, the party would be long over, and Karen would have humiliated me in front of every neighbor I'd ever hoped to respect me. Confrontation hadn't worked. Reasoning hadn't worked. Karen didn't understand boundaries. She only understood dominance. I felt something click inside me, cold and precise. Like a lock sliding open on a hidden vault. If direct confrontation failed, I needed to think like her. Ruthless. Strategic. I needed to find the one weakness that could destroy her entire plan without giving her an inch to retaliate. Outside, the sky began to lighten, turning deep purple and slate gray. The birds began their morning chorus, the world inching toward another sweltering day. I turned away from the glass, feeling a grim smile tug at the corners of my mouth. Karen wanted a party. She wanted music, laughter, praise, and admiration. She wanted to stand above everyone and take credit for something she didn't earn. What she didn't want was to lose control, to be humiliated, to look like a fool in front of the people she manipulated so easily. I exhaled slowly, my breath fogging the glass as I placed a hand against it. The cool pain sent a shiver through my fingers, solidifying my resolve. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing with perfect clarity. She had declared war. And I was done playing defense. As the first rays of sun spilled across the pool deck, illuminating the calm blue water with liquid gold, I felt the rage drain from my chest, replaced by something sharper. Determination. Purpose. Max nudged my leg gently, tail wagging as if to say he trusted whatever came next. Good boy, I whispered, scratching behind his ears. My eyes never left the pool as the breeze stirred its surface into tiny glittering waves. It's time to show her she picked the wrong neighbor. Saturday dawned bright and cloudless, the kind of golden morning that seemed made for pool parties. But as I stood by my back fence, sipping coffee and watching the rising sun gleam across the rippling water, all I felt was quiet satisfaction. Max sat by my side, tail thumping softly against the concrete, sensing my focus as I watched the world wake up. I'd spent all of Friday preparing. It hadn't required anything illegal or elaborate, just the silent whir of a submersible pump, hidden behind a low hedge, draining gallon after gallon under cover of darkness. The gurgling of the hose as it sucked away my frustration had been oddly soothing. By midnight, the waterline had dropped halfway down the tiles, revealing a pale blue band that hadn't seen sunlight in years. By dawn, the pool lay empty, a hollow echoing shell smelling sharply of chlorine and dust. I heard her before I saw her. Karen's voice, pitched high with forced excitement, drifted through the neighborhood like an alarm bell. Okay everyone, unload those folding chairs over there. Catering tables by the deck. The DJ can set up on the west side. Yes, by the hibiscus planters. Careful with the balloons, don't pop them. She came sweeping around the corner into my yard, sunglasses perched atop her head, hair tied in an elaborate braid, her pink linen romper crisp and freshly ironed. Behind her streamed a parade of party rental workers, arms laden with tablecloths, flower centerpieces, boxes of unlit tiki torches. Then she saw it. Karen froze mid-stride, her wedge sandal catching awkwardly on the patio stone as she staggered to a halt. The early sun reflected off the empty pool basin, harsh and glaring. The drain tiles were streaked with mineral residue, and the faint smell of raw chlorine drifted up in sharp chemical waves. The only sound was the quiet whine of Max's breathing beside me and the chirp of sparrows in the trees. What is this?" she said finally, her voice thin with disbelief. Her sunglasses slid down her nose as she gaped at the dry pit. Behind her, the caterers shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other as they waited for direction. "Good morning, Karen," I said, keeping my tone light and calm. "Pool's closed." Her head snapped toward me so quickly her braid swung over her shoulder. "What did you do?" she hissed. I shrugged. "Drained it." "You drained your pool?" She sounded almost strangled, her voice cracking under the strain of suppressed rage. "Why?" I took another sip of coffee, enjoying the rich bitterness on my tongue. "Safety compliance." Her brow furrowed, confusion warring with fury. "What are you talking about?" I gestured lazily toward the pool. "According to HOA bylaws, property owners are liable for any injuries or accidents that occur during community gatherings on their land. I didn't agree to host, but if I was forced to, I couldn't risk someone drowning." She blinked, stunned into silence. For a moment, the only sound was the rustle of the morning breeze through the palm fronds overhead. Then her face contorted into something ugly, twisted with rage and humiliation. "You petty little man," she spat. "Do you realize what you've done? Everyone is coming here expecting a pool party. I've spent weeks planning this." "That's funny," I said, lowering my mug and locking eyes with her. "Because I spent weeks planning to enjoy my weekend in peace." She stepped closer until I could see the fine lines around her eyes, hidden under foundation and bronzer. "You will regret this," she whispered. "I will make sure the HOA finds you so hard, you'll be forced to sell this house." Before I could answer, she spun on her heel and stalked away, pulling her phone from her pocket with trembling fingers. I watched her walk across my yard, barking orders to the caterers to set up food anyway, to rearrange tables for a dry party, to pretend nothing was wrong. But within half an hour, the guests began arriving. Families with small children holding inflatable pool toys. Teenagers in board shorts. Elderly couples carrying sun hats and folding chairs. One by one, their eager smiles faltered as they saw the empty concrete pit. Confusion turned to disappointment, and disappointment turned to whispered questions. Karen paced among them, fake smile plastered back onto her face, sweat beading at her hairline as she gestured wildly at the catering tables. "Don't worry, everyone. Food's still coming, music is ready, we can just relax by the pool. Even if there's no water. It'll be fine." But it wasn't fine. A DJ without a dancing crowd. Kids complaining loudly about having nowhere to swim. Neighbors looking at her with narrowed eyes, sensing something wasn't right. Karen's voice rose higher and higher as she tried to hold it together, calling the local pool maintenance company, demanding an emergency refill. They told her it would take 2 days to refill and rebalance the chemicals, and even then it wouldn't be safe to swim for another 24 hours. Her voice cracked as she screamed at the poor dispatcher before hanging up in defeat. Finally, she did what entitled people always do when their power slips away. She called the cops. Within 20 minutes, 2 sheriff deputies were standing on my back patio, Karen waving her arms wildly as she ranted at them. "He drained it out of spite. It's community sabotage. Arrest him for vandalism or trespassing or something." The taller officer looked at me with calm, assessing eyes. I handed him the printed HOA bylaw pages I'd prepared the night before, highlighting the liability clauses in yellow. He read them in silence while his partner observed Karen, who was now pacing in tight circles, her sandals scraping the concrete with nervous ferocity. "Ma'am," the officer said finally, folding the papers neatly. "It's his private pool on his private property. There's nothing illegal about draining it." She gaped at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But he ruined everything." He shrugged. "Doesn't sound like it was his party to ruin." The guests began drifting away, murmuring awkward apologies to me as they packed up their lawn chairs and half-eaten cupcakes. Some shot Karen looks of pity, others of thinly veiled contempt. I stood by Max, resting a hand on his head, feeling the tension drain out of my shoulders as my yard emptied. Karen remained standing by the drained pool, staring down into its dry basin as if it might magically refill under her gaze. Her shoulders trembled with silent rage, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Finally she turned to me, eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low and shaking. I looked back at her calmly, feeling nothing but cool, clean relief. "No," I said. "It's just beginning." She stormed out through the side gate, nearly tripping over a deflated flamingo pool float lying forgotten on the grass. Max huffed out a satisfied breath beside me, his tail wagging once as if to seal the moment. I sipped the last of my coffee, feeling the sun warm my skin as the world returned to quiet. The breeze lifted strands of my hair across my forehead, carrying away the last echoes of Karen's humiliation. And deep in my chest, a slow certainty settled in. She had lost today. But tomorrow she would face consequences she never saw coming. The following days unfolded like a slow-motion landslide, unstoppable and devastating for Karen. On Sunday morning I sat on my patio with Max, the drained pool yawning empty behind us as I sipped hot coffee and scrolled through my phone. The neighborhood group chat was exploding. Screenshots of Karen's meltdown circulated with captions ranging from sarcastic sympathy to outright mockery. One post read, "HOA queen throws pool party with no water, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy," alongside a short video of her screaming at the police officer. Another meme photoshopped her face onto a dried desert lake bed, text emblazoned across it, "Karen's oasis, closed for karma maintenance." Max snorted softly as if he understood, resting his chin on my foot. The sun rose higher, casting pale light across my backyard. Despite the remnants of party banners fluttering sadly from my fence, the air felt clean as if something toxic had been scrubbed away. Later that afternoon, the HOA board sent out an emergency meeting notice. By Monday evening, neighbors gathered at the clubhouse, buzzing with a tense energy that vibrated through the room. I sat in the back row, silent, Max waiting patiently outside. Karen was already there when I arrived, seated at the head table in her usual place of dominance. But her shoulders were hunched, her hair pulled back too tight, exposing the stressed clench of her jaw. She kept glancing at her phone, tapping manicured nails against the screen with jittery impatience. The HOA president, a stoic man named Greg who usually let Karen run the meetings unchallenged, cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We need to address the events of Saturday's gathering." Karen straightened abruptly, smoothing the front of her blouse. "Yes, we do," she said, injecting artificial confidence into her voice. "Our community was embarrassed by my name's spiteful sabotage. He should be fined immediately for draining his pool without board permission." Greg ignored her. He flipped a page on his notes, eyes scanning the room. "We've reviewed the bylaws. He was within his rights to drain his private pool, especially as he never consented to hosting. Furthermore, the catering deposits have been lost due to misrepresentation of venue approval." Karen's mouth dropped open but no sound came out. Whispers rose among the neighbors seated in rows of folding chairs. Some shot me discreet glances, nodding with faint smiles of respect. Greg continued, his voice cool and final. "Due to unauthorized scheduling, intentional misrepresentation, and the public incident involving law enforcement, the board is voting to suspend Karen's presidency effective immediately." The silence that followed felt absolute. Karen let out a strangled laugh, a brittle sound that broke mid-breath. "You can't be serious. I built this community. Who else will manage you people if not me?" No one answered her. The vote was held swiftly. Hands raced around the room, one after another. The majority was overwhelming. Karen sat there, staring forward, eyes glassy as if she hadn't heard correctly. Her fingers curled around the arms of her chair, knuckles whitening with rage and disbelief. Greg cleared his throat again, uncomfortable. "You may remain on the board as a member, but your presidency is revoked until further notice." She pushed back her chair so suddenly it scraped across the linoleum floor with a screech. The room flinched. She gathered her clipboard and tote bag in jerky, frantic motions, her breathing ragged. "This isn't over," she said, voice low and trembling with barely contained fury. Her eyes locked on mine, filled with naked hatred. "You think you've won but you haven't. You're nothing. Just a man with a dog and an empty pool." I held her gaze calmly, feeling nothing but clean, silent relief. "That's all I ever wanted to be," I said quietly. She turned away abruptly and stormed out of the room, her wedge heels pounding a furious rhythm down the hallway. The door slammed shut behind her, rattling the plastic blinds in its frame. Greg exhaled, looking 10 years older in that moment. "Meeting adjourned," he said. As people stood to leave, several neighbors paused to clap my shoulder or nod with subdued approval. I simply gathered my coat, stepped outside and whistled for Max. The evening air was cool against my face as we walked home. Streetlights flickered on overhead, casting pools of pale gold across the quiet asphalt. Crickets chirped from lawns and bushes, and the scent of freshly watered gardens drifted on the breeze. Max trotted beside me, tail wagging lazily, tongue lolling with contentment. When we reached the house, I stopped at the edge of the drained pool, gazing down at its empty expanse. Pale streaks marbled the blue tiles, the scent of chlorine still faint but fading under the clean breath of night. Above, the stars burned cold and brilliant, a silent canopy of silver points against the black sky. I thought about the first day I saw this house. The realtor had gushed about the pool, the patio, the open floor plan, but all I'd cared about was the feeling that settled in my chest as I stepped onto the cracked concrete. Peace. It was the quiet certainty that here I could build something just for myself. A fortress of solitude after years of numbing fluorescent cubicles and forced corporate small talk. A place where no one could demand a piece of me just because they wanted it. Max nudged my leg, breaking my thoughts. I scratched behind his ears, feeling his warm fur slide under my fingers. "Good boy," I murmured. In the days that followed, Karen tried to rally allies against me, but her reputation was shattered beyond repair. The videos of her meltdown circulated through neighborhood social media pages and even reached nearby HOA communities, branding her forever as the unhinged president who hosted a pool party with no pool. Contractors refused to work with her. Neighbors avoided her gaze. Where she once stalked the sidewalks with her chin lifted high, now she hurried past houses with shoulders hunched, flinching from every window curtain twitch. By the end of the week, I had scheduled the refill of my pool. As I watched the water rush back in, filling the hollow basin with shimmering blue once more, a calm smile curved across my face. The world felt right again. Balanced. That Friday evening, I sat by the freshly filled pool with Max curled up beside me, a cold beer sweating in my hand. The water reflected the pink and orange sunset, rippling gently in the breeze. My phone buzzed. Another meme. Karen's screaming face pasted onto an empty desert reservoir, text overlay reading, "Karen's pool party, dry since 2025. A soft laugh escaped my throat. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the last golden light warm my face as dusk settled in, painting the sky in deepening hues of violet and cobalt. Max shifted, resting his head on my foot, sighing contentedly. For the first time in weeks, I felt the knot of tension in my chest dissolve completely. I raised my beer toward the horizon in a silent toast. To peace. To freedom. To never again letting someone like Karen think my life was hers to command. And as the stars emerged, blinking silently above the darkening world, I closed my eyes and smiled, knowing I had won something far greater than a petty neighborhood feud. I had won back myself.